In today's episode, I want you to always try before trying to figure out if it will work. Sure, boss man. Too unexperienced to contribute? Alright, I'll shut up from now on. You won't want me to leave you alone so you can decide if you want to break up or not. Don't worry, I'll decide for you. Remove our admin permissions, we will wait for the grief to come pouring down from above. So let's get started. I want you to always try before trying to figure out if it will work. Sure, boss man. I'm still working at the same place and enjoying what I do, so my apologies that I will keep things a little vague. Bossman has since left though, which is why I'm sharing now. Please be warned, the fallout is extremely small, but it was to me a small petty win that I look back on fondly. The setup. At my workplace, every employee has 3 sets of duties. The first set of basic duties is the same for each and everyone, which is a prescribed number of hours per day for which we are rostered, with the total number of hours a week ranging from 10 to 28 hours depending on whether you are middle management or an ordinary employee such as myself. The second and third set of duties are highly varied, and are organized into various committees which an employee can technically change between every year. Some involve heavier working hours or planning, whereas others involve more menial, simpler tasks. As you may imagine, rostering the prescribed hours for employees must be a heavy affair, and there must be a committee to oversee it. My second set of duties happen to fall under this committee, and I help with the rostering, which is mainly done on a highly specialized and expensive software twice a year, with the committee managing substitutions whenever an employee is away on sick leave or other reasons throughout the year. Although it was my first job, I had been personally trained for 2 years by my predecessor in the committee, who was due to retire. At the time of the Malicious compliance, I have been a valued member for 3 years who have made noted contributions towards the rostering processes. Now on to the Malicious compliance. As usual, our story starts when a new boss came into our workplace, whom I shall call Bossman going forward. There are usually 2 or 3 bosses of equal standing above our middle management. Now Bossman fancied himself a people's person, who would often listen to the grievances of ordinary employees and try to find ways to change things such that ordinary employee satisfaction could improve. Now this would usually be a good thing, except that he would entertain unreasonable requests as well. This resulted in time wasted trying out untenable solutions, or situations where work was shifted around such that it became unfair to other individuals. As you may expect, this usually caused new grievances, and then work was shifted back to how it was originally allocated because that had been the most fair in the first place. We had to interact with Bossman quite frequently as some grievances had to do with rostering. As Bossman had had some experience in said committee in the past elsewhere, he fancied himself an expert in what we were doing. We frequently found ourselves explaining to him why certain grievances were unreasonable, and we could not accommodate the requests during rostering. Finally, it reached a point whereby he said something along the lines of, "I want you to always try before trying to figure out if it will work." Now, we work 5 days a week. One of the instructions he had given us, along with that ultimatum, was that one particular employee be prescribed no more than 4 hours a day, with a total number of 26 prescribed hours every week. Those of you mathematically inclined will see where the problem is. 26 divided by 5 is equal to 5 hours daily with 1 left over. There was no way we could follow his instructions unless the employee came in every day of the week. But oh well, Bossman wants what Bossman wants. None of us said anything to Bossman and proceeded to run the software, producing multiple failed rosters as the software could not produce a full roster for everyone. But man, did we keep trying. The fallout. Eventually, Bossman came to check in on us and our progress as we were behind schedule, since the roster also had to be vetted by middle management and managers were wondering why Bossman had not given the go-ahead for any copies of the roster. The manager for our committee, who's really awesome and tactful, informed Bossman that no full roster has been produced, as we were still trying to get the software to ensure that particular employee did not have more than 4 hours rostered per day. Bossman asked why was there a problem with that, which is when the manager reminded him that said employee had to fulfill 26 prescribed hours a week. Bossman was confused as to why we did not bring this up earlier, as it was clear that this set of conditions isn't logically possible. Manager tactfully reminded Bossman that he had given us these conditions along with the instruction to try first before trying to figure out if there were any problems with the conditions he had given us. To be fair to Bossman, he took it in his stride and approved the suggested changes we requested to the set of conditions he had given us on the spot. We delivered a satisfactory roster to him by the end of the same working day. For the remainder of the time he was with us, Bossman would actually listen if we proposed changes or protested to some of the unreasonable requests with regards to rostering without requiring us to waste time trying it out first. Clarification before some of you point out that the particular employee, who is supposed to have no more than 4 prescribed hours a day, is the one at fault. Said employee had actually requested to have lesser prescribed hours in a week, as an average worker usually has 20 prescribed hours a week, and it's only when we are extremely short-handed that a handful of workers go up to the maximum of 28 prescribed hours. This is so that we have time to complete our other 2 sets of duties as well, which are not counted towards these prescribed hours. For some reason, Bossman saw the solution as to reduce the number of prescribed hours per day, without lowering the total number of prescribed hours in a week. Too inexperienced to contribute? Alright, I'll shut up from now on. Hi, everyone. First-time poster. Mandatory mobile disclaimer and all. Not a native English speaker, but I'm okay. This isn't a big MC heavy with consequences. I started as a nurse a few years ago. After being oriented in the ER, I got a position on a cardio unit in the same hospital. The manager of this particular unit was one mean old nurse pretty much everyone hated except a select few on the day shift. I was night shift. Now a little personal background. When I started studying as a nurse, I had the chance to meet and spend a day with a primary care nurse practitioner, NP. She inspired me to become one as well. So very early on in my training, I knew that's what I wanted to be. I worked hard to have good grades in class, and even outside my classes, I was reading on the Merck manual, learning with osmosis, and reading scientific articles to increase my knowledge faster, knowing the job I really wanted required more advanced knowledge than what is required of a starting nurse. One night, my colleague is checking up a patient's file and asks out loud why the cardiologist prescribed colchicine for a patient with pericarditis. I knew the answer, so I informed her. She looked at me for a few seconds and said okay. On the morning of the next day, my boss calls me in her office and sits me down. She said she received a complaint that I was speaking out of turn at the station, and she agreed that I was too inexperienced to offer advice, counsel, or information to nurses with more experience. She said I should keep my comments to myself until my place is secured in the team. Now keep in mind, I didn't intrude on a conversation or read over her shoulder. She asked a question out loud, and I thought I was helping her by answering. What I told her was right. The following nights I didn't peep a word, nor any other night. Anytime my colleagues had a theoretical question or wondered something aloud, I stayed quiet and kept my head in my files. If they needed physical help, I'd give it without a word. Once they even mentioned how quiet I was, and I told them I was told not to offer my opinion at the station, and it cast a chill, but they didn't push anymore. After a few months I left that unit to go back to the ER, where I was truly appreciated and felt a part of the team. I'm now in a NP program. You won't want me to leave you alone so you can decide if you want to break up or not. Don't worry, I'll decide for you. About 3 years ago now, I was in an abusive relationship. Sure, he never put a hand on me, but the emotional damage lasted a long time. To make a long story short, his favorite game to play was pretending that he was going to take his own life, and I was the only person in the world who could stop him. I'm sure you don't need any more explanation to understand his character. Not only was he verbally abusive and incredibly manipulative, but he, of course, was a very jealous person. The event that leads up to my story revolves around a guy who was a very close friend of mine. Funny thing is that my ex liked him too. Always had nice things to say about him, got along with him really well, etc. But it came time for this friend to go to college, and he was moving away. I was sad, and expressed to my ex that I would miss him a lot. Suddenly, my then boyfriend became very cold and just stopped talking to me. 4 hours. Finally, after my texting him, nagging him, giving him his space, he let me know that he was hurt, disgusted, and betrayed, that I would ever speak about another man. The guy was 17, we were 19, like that. He let me know that he needed some time to himself to think about what to do with me. This was probably the 4th or 5th time he had given me the silent treatment as a form of punishment. And they would usually last about a week or so. I would beg and beg and beg for him to talk to me, and finally he would grace me with his attention, and let me know that I was blessed with his forgiveness for my cruelty. LMAO. So I sat and waited. Anxious and unable to sleep, because I was terrified that he would threaten to take his own life again. Then maybe 3 or 4 days later, something inside of me broke. I realized how peaceful things were for me when I wasn't talking to him. All of a sudden, my rose-tinted glasses came off and I realized that I had lost attraction to him a long time ago, and I was only with him out of fear. He was, physically and mentally, revolting. So I decided what I was going to do with him. Sure, I could just have blocked him, and maybe nowadays I would have. But at the time, this guy caused me so much emotional distress, and I wanted to make sure I rubbed it in. I decided to just stay silent, like he wanted me to, and finally about 3 days after I made my decision, he texted me. So, what are we? I let him know that we were done. I have never ever seen him backtrack so hard. He blew up my phone with texts and phone calls saying how sorry he was for ignoring me. Then he tried to say it was my fault, and that he was actually giving me space, because he thought I was mad at him. All I said was that I was done trying to be in a relationship with someone who refused to talk to me about problems, and expected me to be responsible for their life. I blocked him. He tracked down every account I had on every social media, sending me these long paragraphs about how sorry he was, and he got blocked on those too. Yeah, I'm sure he was very sorry once he realized that he lost his favorite punching bag. This is where he surprised me. He was so caught up in his good guy, tough guy facade, I never thought he would try to involve other people. He went to our mutual friends and eventually drove them all away by begging them to make me talk to him, or asking them to send me his long paragraphs. They read his letters to me and began to realize how horrible and manipulative he was, and soon they cut him off too. He showed his true colors to everyone shortly after and revealed himself as the abuser he always had been. But that's a different story for another day. Remember folks, communication is key. TLDR ex-boyfriend expects me to sit in silence and wait for him to decide if we're going to continue to be together or not. I do what he wants, and I sit in silence. Remove our admin permissions, we will wait for the grief to come pouring down from above. This happened about 20 years ago, as I was starting my IT career. The organization I was working for was an early adopter, and had just rolled out Windows 2000, and delegated control was still a good idea, a long way off being implemented. It was discussed making this happen by the sysadmins, but not implemented to allow the help desk to have granulated permissions, but this had not been worked out yet. I was still on the help desk, and worked with Alec. Alec had been around since I think Noah was building the Ark, and possibly handed him the hammer when needed, so Alec knew everyone and had interesting stories to tell. If Alec is on here, he can tell his own stories. The computer corporation that the organization had hired to manage second and third level escalations above help desk decided that the lowly help desk peons, Alec and I, could not have domain administration permissions anymore, as we were doing the work and taking cases off them. That meant they could not justify as many man-hours they were charging our organization. So on Wednesday night our accounts were removed from the elevated permissions without notifying us. Possibly our managers were notified, but not what the implications were. Here comes the compliance. See, all we could do now was catch and dispatch, nothing else. Simply take the call and log it into the helpdesk system, saying someone needed their account unlocked to be able to work, someone else wanted to change their password, as they had forgotten their password, and another person needed access to a specific folder on the file server/s. This is all run-of-the-mill level 1 tasks that take seconds to complete. However, not this Thursday. See, the computer corporation that day needed to do their weekly team building meeting, that I was not privy to, not working for them. However, I am sure they were told how much extra money they would be making doing all these extra cases. Alex started after me, as he then had the later finish, so I explained our lack of access now, and that we would have to simply catch and dispatch calls now, with the computer corporation doing all the work. This is boring and what gives help desk roles a really bad name. Alec wanted to go our managers to get this changed immediately. However, I convinced him to comply with the corporation's diktat. We would allow the people directly affected by not being able to work to complain to their managers, then they would complain to ours, so we don't look like we are being difficult to the computer corporation new stance, whom we had to get along with. Oh yes, they did complain. The manager for computer corporation got hauled out of their team meeting to fix things up, so we could do our work and our colleagues could then do theirs. When their manager asked why we did not say these cases were backing up, we replied we could not change/unlock passwords, and they were busy in their meeting, and we were asked previously not to disturb them. Petty, I know, but we did get our admin rights back before lunchtime. Also, now things are massively changed and domain admin rights are not handed out so fast. But this was early days of Windows 2000. Alec, you magnificent bastard, hope you are still kicking goals, and this brings back memories. Thanks for watching.